Accused of marital rape, I found myself thrown into jail by my own wife, Olivia. She despised me, claiming I had forcibly taken her virginity, something she had apparently planned as a special gift for Mark, her childhood crush. The 2 years I spent locked away smoothed out all my rough edges, hardening me in ways I hadn't expected. Upon release, I followed what I thought were her wishes and readily signed the divorce papers, intending to step aside so she could finally be with Mark. But she didn't see it that way. She thought my compliance was just another manipulative tactic, another way for me to hold on to her. If that's what you really think, I remember thinking bitterly, then fine, I'll play it your way. A cold voice inside me added, but don't ever forget, Olivia, without me propping you up, you're worth less than a stray dog. After being cut off from the world for 2 years, my interest in many things had simply faded. Even when I saw it was Olivia herself who had come to pick me up from the prison gates, there wasn't that familiar surge of emotion, that desperate longing I used to feel. My assistant quietly took my small, surprisingly lightweight black suitcase. He looked surprised, first by how light it was, then gave me a look filled with quiet sympathy. If anyone had bothered to visit me or send anything during those 2 years, my clothes wouldn't have been able to fill even this small bag. Seeing me just standing there, lost in thought perhaps, Olivia frowned impatiently from the driver's seat of her expensive car. Aren't you getting in? Are you waiting for me to open the door for you? 2 years locked up, and you're still the same entitled brat. Her familiar tone, dripping with disdain, unexpectedly caused a pang in my long, dormant heart. I hadn't thought I could still feel hurt by anything she said. The only difference now was that I wouldn't let it show on my face. If this woman knew she could still wound me, she would only mock me more relentlessly, tearing apart the few shreds of dignity I had left. My dignity was already hanging by a thread. I didn't want to lose that last bit of self-respect. But I knew in her eyes, my self-respect was nothing more than garbage to be kicked aside. In the back seat of the car, another man was already sitting there. Mark, Olivia's longtime love, the man she'd supposedly saved herself for. As soon as I settled into the passenger seat, he greeted me with surprising warmth. "Ethan, long time no see." I just nodded curtly at his reflection in the rearview mirror, my face expressionless. I don't know what exactly set Olivia off this time, maybe my lack of reaction, but her anger suddenly flared up again. The next second, her phone came flying from her hand, hitting me sharply in the back of the head. I winced instinctively. 2 years, and you still haven't learned how to respect people, she snapped. Weren't rapists like you the most hated scum in prison? Prison? A place where all the darkness and malice of society gathers. It truly hates 2 kinds of people the most: those who harm children and rapists like me. Men accused of violating innocent women. I let the bitterness spread through me like a cold poison. The memory of the past 2 years, the countless fists that had rained down on me like relentless drops of rain, seemed to replay vividly before my eyes. The other inmates had unleashed their own captive malice onto me, as if by beating me, they could somehow wash away their own sins, countering evil with more evil. Mark quickly pulled Olivia into his arms, soothing her softly. "Olivia, honey, calm down. Ethan has been out of touch with society for 2 years. It's perfectly normal for him to be a bit awkward with social interactions right now. Don't stress yourself over such trivial things. I'll help guide him properly. After all," he added, his voice gentle, "he did once love and care for you." Mark's seemingly sincere words brought tears to Olivia's eyes. She wept softly in his arms for a moment. "But he took it, Mark. He took what was most precious to me. The gift I was saving for you." Her voice broke. How could he just take it away like that? Olivia clearly wished I were dead. Without that night, the night she claimed I drugged her, though I never did, we wouldn't have slept together. Mark looked helpless, yet sympathetic as he kissed Olivia's forehead gently. It's okay, Olivia. Just having you by my side now is enough for me. Oh, Mark, I love you, she sobbed. I remembered our first wedding anniversary. I had been genuinely surprised, even thrilled, to receive a text from Olivia inviting me to come home and celebrate with her. I thought perhaps our strained, one-sided marriage finally had a glimmer of hope. I always knew Olivia didn't love me. If it hadn't been for the desperate need to save her family's failing business and fortunes, she would never have agreed to marry me. That night, however, she wasn't as cold and distant as usual. She lavished unexpected warmth on me, a warmth that seemed to come from deep within her soul until we were intimately intertwined. But then, just as culmination neared, she cried out, "Mark! Oh, Mark! I love you!" In that instant, I realized the truth. Mark had publicly announced his engagement to another woman earlier that same evening, and I, in Olivia's twisted narrative, became the convenient villain, the rapist who had defiled her precious gift intended for him. Olivia hated me with a burning intensity. "Knowing there's someone else in my heart," she had screamed at me later, breaking down completely, throwing anything she could reach. Why didn't you push me away? Why did you let it happen? But the truth was, she had been the one to initiate everything that night. The large estate, my family home, had been legally transferred into Olivia's name the very day I was imprisoned. Now, as we arrived, Mr. Harrison, the old family butler, hesitated before walking ahead of me into the house. Even if he wanted to speak with me, he clearly needed to mind Olivia's mood and demeanor. She was the head of the house now. Not long ago, according to whispers, someone on staff had been instantly fired by Olivia and subsequently blacklisted throughout the industry simply for failing to iron one of Mark's shirts perfectly on time. "Sir, you've suffered greatly," the old butler murmured, his voice filled with genuine concern during a brief moment when Olivia and Mark went upstairs together to change clothes. He quickly slipped a small envelope into my hand. I was taken aback, hesitant to accept what felt like charity. "Sir," he insisted quietly, "if it weren't for you years ago, my granddaughter, she would have been doomed. This," he indicated the envelope, "originally belonged to you anyway. Please, take it." Inside was a credit card, one I had used long ago to cover his granddaughter Lily's extensive medical bills when she was critically ill. I clenched it tightly in my hand, the plastic cool against my skin. Ultimately, compelled by my current desperate situation, I put it in my pocket. As long as I was breathing, it seemed, Olivia would only ever despise me. The old room I used to occupy in the vast mansion had been completely transformed. It was now a lavishly appointed pet room for her prize-winning dogs. And Olivia was absolutely determined that I stay there, sharing the space with her animals. It was her idea of ultimate humiliation. Little did she know, even a dog's room felt like a palace compared to the squalor and danger I had endured for the past 2 years. She looked at me disdainfully, clinging possessively to Mark's arm. "The room next door is where Mark and I will be staying," she announced coldly. "You are to stay in here tonight. Don't wander off, and don't disturb us. Even if you hear anything, don't get any inappropriate ideas, Ethan. Remember your current status. You have absolutely no place to argue with me about anything." Her gaze upon me was harsh, the kind one might reserve for a truly heinous criminal. Yet, the way she looked at Mark was filled with an affection so deep it seemed to overflow. Before prison, seeing that look might have torn me apart inside. But now, my heart felt strangely calm, like still water. After all, I had returned this time with the sole intention of finalizing the divorce and moving on. My first night back in the family estate was spent listening to the muffled sounds emanating from the adjacent bedroom, where Olivia and Mark were apparently like two wild animals, finally unleashing years of lust buried deep within their souls. In the dead of night, their voices carried clearly through the wall. "Olivia," Mark's voice was thick with emotion. "I regret it so much. I regret ever giving you up to Ethan back then. All these years, I find myself unable to be apart from you, needing you more and more." Olivia was clearly deeply affected by Mark's words, which sounded very much like a confession she had been waiting years to hear. "Oh, Mark. Me too," she whispered back passionately. "Every single day I spent married to him made me sick. Luckily, I finally waited long enough for you to come back to me." Their words felt like a deliberate warning aimed at me, reinforcing that they were the perfect, destined couple, and I was merely an inconvenient intruder who had somehow barged into their fairy tale. "Olivia," Mark asked after a moment, "aren't you afraid of making Ethan angry by being like this?" "How could I be?" Olivia scoffed dismissively. "He wouldn't dare get mad at me. In his pathetic heart, I mean more to him than his own life. He's just a miserable, obsessed person." The next morning, I knocked firmly on the door of the adjacent bedroom. Thanks to my legal background and the long, sleepless night, I had managed to prepare a set of comprehensive divorce papers. As if intending to deliberately provoke me further, Olivia answered the door wrapped only in a thin bath towel, her skin marked with the unmistakable traces of their night's passion. She carried herself with an air of arrogant pride, disdain shining brightly in her eyes. "What do you want?" she demanded coolly. I silently averted my gaze from her state of undress and handed over the neatly folded papers. "Here, for the divorce." Olivia burst out laughing, as if I had just told the most ridiculous joke she had ever heard. "You? Divorcing me?" Her hands crossed defensively over her chest, her tone dripping with disbelief. "Ethan, what on earth makes you think you have the right to bring this up with me?" Just then, Mark appeared behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. The two of them behaved with blatant intimacy, right in front of me, leaving me standing there feeling like an invisible, irrelevant third wheel, watching two predators ready to pounce. After a long, uncomfortable moment, Olivia finally spared some attention for me again. "Ethan, if you really want a divorce, sure," she said with a cruel smirk. "Beg me. Get down on your knees right now and beg me for it." I was stunned. I hadn't expected Olivia to make such a deliberately difficult and humiliating demand. I couldn't understand it. She had her lover right there beside her. Why was she still trying to make things difficult for me? Shouldn't she, just like me, want to escape this sham of a marriage as soon as possible? Seeing my shocked silence, Olivia scoffed lightly. "I knew it. This was just another one of your pathetic tricks, wasn't it? Hearing about me being with another man finally got under your skin, didn't it? Well, if you can't stand it, then just move out. You're useless anyway. Who else would possibly take you in once you leave me?" She seemed determined to crush every last bit of my pride. The two most important things for a man, his freedom and his dignity, she had systematically destroyed. "Do you really hate me that much?" The question slipped out, voicing the confusion swirling inside me. Olivia nodded without a moment's hesitation. "Yes, just looking at you makes me feel physically sick." Taking a deep breath, I pulled back the papers I had offered, withdrawing along with them my last tiny shred of hope for any kindness or reason from her. Since she clearly intended to show no decency, I had no reason to dwell any longer in that foolish fantasy of reconciliation or understanding. The law firm I had started years ago was now down to just one remaining partner, thanks to my unexpected imprisonment. It was ironically funny, wasn't it? A lawyer sent to jail by his own wife, probably the biggest joke in the legal world. When I finally managed to meet with my old friend and partner and mentioned the divorce out loud, he laughed with audible relief. "Ethan, you finally came around. Don't worry about a thing. I'll get everything back for you this time. Everything she took, including your reputation. 2 years ago, had I not foolishly given up the chance to defend myself against her accusations, maybe I wouldn't have landed in this sorry state. Having been completely stripped of my illusions about love, I suddenly realized this with painful clarity. Thanks to the credit card Mr. Harrison had given me, I managed to rent a small, simple, one-bedroom apartment in a modest neighborhood. When Olivia realized I hadn't returned to the estate and wasn't bluffing about leaving, an uncharacteristic flicker of panic flashed across her face. She called me, her voice sharp. "What do you mean by not coming home? Do you want the whole world to know you can't bear to be near me?" With a small, humorless chuckle, I folded the cleaning cloth I was using to wipe down my new, empty kitchen counter and finally turned my attention to the phone call. "Well, isn't it considered bad luck to have a convicted criminal living in your home? Don't worry, Olivia. Your friends will understand. They never liked me anyway." To her social circle, I had always been the villain, the jerk who supposedly stole someone else's true love. On the other end of the line, I could hear Mark hastily comforting Olivia, his voice murmuring soothingly in her ear. "Olivia, darling, don't get mad at him. Maybe he's finally realized his past mistakes and just doesn't dare to stay by your side anymore. Since that's the case, just let him go. We can finally enjoy our lives together. Just the two of us." Mark gently whispered persuasive words into Olivia's ear, sentence after sentence, like a form of brainwashing. Under his influence, Olivia quickly changed her mind. After gathering herself, she returned to her usual tone of disdainful superiority when she spoke again. "You're right, Mark. Ethan, I agree to the divorce. Give me the papers. We'll sign them today and call it quits for good. That will spare me the sight of you, which frankly makes me sick." She sounded as high and mighty as ever, clearly thinking I would comply meekly like I always had before, doing whatever she commanded. I turned away from the phone, my face expressionless, and fed the divorce papers I had prepared into the small paper shredder I had just bought. "Too late," I said calmly into the phone. "I'm not aiming for a peaceful divorce anymore." Before, I had considered the years we spent together, even the good parts from childhood, and wanted to leave both of us with some semblance of dignity. But after Olivia trampled on my basic dignity as a man time and time again, I just didn't want to hold back any longer. "Ethan, are you really going to make this public? All we're doing is getting a divorce." Olivia called me again later, furious after receiving the official court summons. "And why did you have to drag Mark into this? His work is completely on hold now because of you." His work? More like he was afraid his extensive gambling activities and massive debts would get exposed during the legal proceedings. Sure, that wouldn't be a pretty picture for him. "If it was just between us, Olivia," I replied evenly, "it wouldn't need a court battle. But what about the significant asset transfers that happened while I was away?" I had always been curious why Mark had suddenly reappeared in Olivia's life after years of absence. It turned out he had racked up enormous gambling debts overseas. He had hurried back specifically to squeeze Olivia for her wealth that was originally mine. Naturally, I wouldn't tell Olivia this directly. A woman blinded by love, or what she thought was love, rarely listens to reason. Whenever I might present evidence, she would inevitably trust her feelings over cold, hard facts, especially since her feelings had never seemed particularly rational or stable. Do you not want to divorce me?" Olivia asked hesitantly after a pause, completely misinterpreting my actions. She assumed this legal battle was just my twisted way of trying to keep her. "You're jealous, aren't you?" she exclaimed suddenly, her voice filled with an almost giddy excitement. "Ethan, I knew it. I knew you could never truly get over me. Maybe we could start over?" Her voice turned softer, almost pleading. "I've just realized recently, I think I still have some feelings for you too. As long as you promise not to lay a hand on Mark, I can try being with you again." It felt exactly like she was carelessly throwing a bone to a stray dog, offering me the insignificant scraps of her affection. I couldn't help but smile, a bitter, knowing smile. I finally realized just how incredibly poor my judgment had been all those years ago, to have fallen for such a bizarre, self-absorbed woman. It had cost me my freedom, my reputation, nearly my life. "Why should I come back running just because you snap your fingers, Olivia?" I asked quietly. "You're thinking way too highly of yourself." On the other end of the line, I heard Olivia's breath hitch sharply. Even through the phone, I could practically feel her simmering fury. "Ethan, don't be stupid," she hissed. "You'll regret it if you keep this up. You'll regret crossing me." My childhood wasn't particularly pleasant. Colorful memories were few and far between. The few bits of brightness I did recall mostly involved Olivia. After my parents divorced, I became an unwanted burden. They each quickly started new families, leaving me behind in a large, empty house with only Mr. Harrison, the aging butler, for company. Materially, I never had to worry about food or clothes. I didn't have to think about earning a living or chasing after money, but apart from those basic necessities, I had nothing. No warmth, no real connection, no sense of belonging. For as long as I could remember, the person who spent the most time with me was Mr. Harrison. Maybe even Olivia herself doesn't remember anymore how our connection first started. She had literally jumped over the wall into my garden one afternoon out of nowhere, bossily demanding that I play hide-and-seek with her. "Why do you always frown like a grumpy old man?" she had demanded, poking my cheek. "You're obviously much better looking than that stupid Prince character in our class, Reader. Why the sour face? You're embarrassing me." She had put her small hands on her hips, then reached up and physically pulled the corners of my mouth upwards with indignant determination. If the other kids knew I had a boyfriend this good-looking, I'd definitely become the queen bee of the whole class. But she wasn't just stubborn and bossy. At 13, my birthday felt special for the very first time. Olivia, despite having recently lost a front tooth, had smashed her piggy bank to buy me a small, thoughtful gift, a simple silver chain. "You don't have parents around," she had declared matter-of-factly, "and I don't have my front tooth. See, we're the same. Happy birthday, brother." That unexpected, simple happiness vanished abruptly when her family moved away shortly after. When I heard about her again years later, it was through hushed whispers about her family's business nearing bankruptcy. Now, slowly, I started doing some odd jobs again, taking on cases as a junior lawyer at my friend's firm. I felt a new sense of purpose stirring within me, as if the scattered pieces of my life were finally starting to come together. Even my sleep improved, becoming deeper and more restful than it had been in years. Except for occasionally dealing with the frustrating divorce negotiations, I was fully immersed in rebuilding my own life, with little time or energy for anything else. The only real problem was Olivia herself. She repeatedly refused to engage seriously in the divorce proceedings, dragging things out unnecessarily. To resolve the matter quickly and finally cut ties, I decided I needed to meet with her one last time. For some reason I couldn't fathom, Olivia just seemed deeply resistant to the idea of divorce. It was like a part of her instinctively fought against it, even though she claimed to despise me. She had apparently been much busier lately, First, several important business deals had mysteriously fallen through for no apparent reason. Then, her company's finances ran into serious issues. After some discreet investigation I conducted through my firm, it turned out someone within her company had been systematically embezzling funds. She was clearly physically and mentally exhausted from dealing with the fallout. On top of that, she also had to constantly manage Mark, who, according to mutual acquaintances, had been pressuring her relentlessly to finalize the divorce. "Olivia, we've been apart for so long," he apparently kept saying. "I just want us to finally start our life together properly." During those trying times, Olivia felt completely drained and overwhelmed. That's likely why, when I formally requested a meeting to discuss the divorce settlement, she agreed without hesitation. It probably felt like a chance for her to finally catch her breath, even if it meant facing me. "Ethan, we don't have to take things this far, do we?" Just a month apart, and Olivia looked noticeably worn out, the stress evident on her face. I quietly sipped my coffee, letting her speak. "Olivia," I said calmly, "you know I never forced you, right? Not that night." Her face visibly changed, her color rising, her breath quickening as the memory of that night clearly resurfaced. She knew, deep down, that I had never forced her. Even after we got married, when she expressed reluctance to live together immediately, I had respected her wish, promising patiently to wait until she was ready. "So what, Ethan?" she retorted defensively. "You said you'd always obey me when we got married. You promised." Olivia was still stubborn, clinging to twisted logic. I sighed inwardly. Having heard whispers about her recent business troubles, I had come prepared. I pulled out some papers I had compiled earlier, detailed financial reports and transaction logs, and slid them across the table towards her. "The person who has been embezzling funds from your company, it's him. It's Mark. The evidence is right here," I stated plainly. "If you want any chance of saving your company, you need to work with me now to finalize this divorce quickly. Then maybe I can help you." Stunned, Olivia stared down at the documents, her eyes scanning the pages rapidly. She couldn't find any flaw, any discrepancy. The evidence was irrefutable. Mark had been systematically using her, bleeding her company dry from the very start. As the reality sank in, Olivia gradually found it harder and harder to breathe. She suddenly clutched her stomach, a sharp gasp escaping her lips, before collapsing abruptly to the ground. At the hospital, Olivia was in shock after the doctor delivered the news. "Yes, Miss Olivia," the doctor nodded gravely. "The test results confirm that you are pregnant." "Impossible!" Olivia gasped, her face pale. She insisted she had been taking precautions diligently. She quickly pulled a small bottle of pills from her handbag and showed it to the doctor. The doctor took the bottle, sniffed the contents briefly, and returned it to her with a distinct frown. "These are just vitamin supplements, Miss Olivia," he informed her gently. "They are not contraceptives." Ever since the doctor left the room, Olivia had remained completely silent for nearly half an hour, staring blankly at the wall. Finally, she spoke, her voice flat. "Ethan, do you find me utterly ridiculous now? Betrayed by the man I loved, and now pregnant at the absolute worst possible time." Ignoring her attempt at self-mockery, my mind was already elsewhere, thinking about redecorating. Once I finally had the signed divorce papers in hand, it would definitely be time to find a new home. New beginnings required a new place. I had been waiting patiently outside her hospital room until Mark finally showed up. "Ethan, are you happy now?" Mark grabbed my arm tightly as soon as he saw me, his fingers digging into my flesh with surprising force. I could feel my muscles twisting under his grip. I just glanced at him calmly, my expression neutral. "Don't talk to me like you're the wronged party in some cheap drama, Mark. You're the other man here, but technically, you're still just a man acting out." Mark looked stunned, clearly taken aback. It was likely the first time he had ever heard me speak to him with anything other than forced politeness or repressed anger. It was obviously a shock to his system. Before, purely for Olivia's sake, I had pretty much put up with whatever nonsense he dished out. "Are you trying to provoke me?" he snarled, leaning closer. "Do you really think acting tough like this will make Olivia come back to you? Don't forget, she was the one who sent you to prison in the first place." I calmly pushed his hand off my shoulder. "Just a weakling who relies on women to survive. You're not even worth my time." Turning around, I saw Olivia slumped weakly against the doorframe of her room, looking incredibly fragile. "Ethan, please, don't leave," she pleaded softly, her eyes fixed on me. Hearing her plea, Mark's face contorted with anger, turning an ugly shade of green. "Olivia!" he snapped, trying to regain control. "I'll pretend you're not in your right mind saying that. We're having a baby, remember? Our baby. We need to get back home and rest so our baby doesn't get tired." Olivia violently shook off Mark's supporting arm and stumbled towards me, her eyes filled with a desperate, renewed hope. "Ethan, I know you still care about me," she whispered urgently. "Otherwise you wouldn't have waited outside my room for so long, right?" Her familiar way of twisting situations to fit her narrative made me realize she was likely recalling some past memories where my waiting signified devotion. My gaze flickered down to her hand, and I noticed she was nervously twisting the simple strand of crystal beads she had given me for my 13th birthday, the one tangible link to our shared past. Tears streamed down her face. "I just realized you're the brother, the boy from my childhood," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry, Ethan. I didn't mean to forget you. I swear I didn't. Can you possibly give Olivia another chance? I've finally realized how wrong I was about everything. I want us to be together again, like we used to be, like we were supposed to be." She cried openly, her tears landing warm on the back of my hand. This display of emotion, this desperate plea, was something that would have deeply moved the old me. I used to lie awake at night dreaming of the day she might finally shed a single tear for me. Back then, her tears would have felt like the most treasured prize imaginable. But not anymore. With a quiet sigh, I found I couldn't bear to see her so utterly vulnerable and broken, regardless of who else was in the room or what had happened between us. I probably would have waited for any family member to arrive in such a situation. Everyone needs support at their lowest point. Gently, I answered her implicit questions and helped her steady herself back towards the hospital room door. "Olivia," I said softly but firmly, "I do cherish our childhood memories. They mean something to me, but I'm not waiting for you anymore." She grasped my wrist tightly, refusing to let go. "But you promised you'd love me forever," she insisted, her eyes red-rimmed and pleading. "Aren't you bothered by the baby? I'll get rid of it. I swear I will. I just want to be with you, Ethan." Seeing her desperate refusal to face reality, I carefully disentangled my hand from her grip. "It's not possible, Olivia," I stated unequivocally. "I'm a man. I have my dignity." There was another, more practical reason why Mark was so eager to marry Olivia quickly. Before our ill-fated marriage, I had insisted Olivia sign a comprehensive prenuptial agreement. It clearly listed all my substantial personal assets and properties. A key clause stated that should anything happen to me, incapacitating me, or resulting in my death, all those assets would automatically transfer to Olivia. This represented a huge temptation for someone like Mark, already strapped with massive gambling debts. Once they were married, all those assets would legally become joint marital property, easily accessible to him to clear his debts and fund his lifestyle. Olivia was completely devastated by the cumulative revelations. She never imagined such calculated betrayal from the man she had idolized and loved for so long. Being cheated on, discovering she had falsely accused an innocent man, me, of a heinous crime within her marriage, learning about the misappropriated funds with no clear way to fix the financial damage, all these truths crushed her spirit. She found herself trapped in a cycle of endless regret, lamenting her incredibly poor judgment. Mark, however, still hadn't fully realized the extent of his defeat. He often tried to flaunt his supposed victory in front of me whenever our paths crossed during the ongoing legal processes. "Ethan, Olivia just misspoke that day at the hospital," he'd sneer confidently. "She wasn't thinking clearly. Don't let her confused words rekindle any stupid feelings you might still have. You'll always just be her lapdog, you know," he taunted, boasting as if relying entirely on a woman for financial survival was something to be genuinely proud of. I chuckled silently, shaking my head. "Mr. Mark," I replied calmly, "aren't you worried Olivia might overhear you talking like that and finally turn against you completely? After all," I added pointedly, "she's your only support system now, isn't she?" Mark just snickered dismissively. "Nah, she loves me too much. She'll forgive me for whatever I do. Besides," he leaned in conspiratorially, lowering his voice, "I was wise enough to poke some tiny holes in those condoms we were using. They always say a child is the best way to keep a woman tied down." I casually glanced just past his shoulder. He instinctively followed my gaze, finding Olivia standing there, biting her lip hard, her whole body trembling with uncontrollable anger. She marched forward and slapped him hard across the face. "You scumbag, get out!" she yelled, her voice raw with fury. John looked utterly dumbfounded, immediately trying his old tricks, attempting to smooth things over with apologies and excuses. But Olivia wasn't buying his lies anymore. She took several deep, steadying breaths, then pulled out the finalized divorce papers I had sent over. She signed them with a decisive flourish. "There's a record of all my company's finances included in there too," she stated coldly, handing the documents to my waiting lawyer. "I only have one condition." She paused, closing her eyes briefly as if in pain, then continued, her voice firm. "Put him in prison for life." The court eventually sentenced Mark to 35 years. Alongside the extensive evidence I provided regarding the embezzlement and fraud, the police investigation uncovered his involvement in several foreign crimes, including involuntary manslaughter related to his gambling debts. With the verdict delivered and Mark imprisoned, my own reputation was finally and fully restored. Olivia lost a lot of weight in the following months. She looked frail and haunted. One afternoon, she approached me hesitantly after glancing my way several times across a crowded cafe. "I terminated the pregnancy," she admitted quietly, looking down at her hands. I nodded, already aware. "Ethan," she said, looking up, her eyes serious, "I apologize. For everything. For all my past mistakes." I pondered her words for a while, looking up at the large, leafy banyan tree outside the cafe window, then exhaled deeply. "I won't forgive you, Olivia." Her voice broke, tears instantly welling up. She couldn't hold back any longer and collapsed into my arms, sobbing uncontrollably. I stood stiffly, unsure whether I should push her away. Pushing someone after a recent miscarriage. Is that a physical risk I need to worry about too? The thought felt absurdly practical amidst the emotional turmoil. "Ethan, I'm truly, truly sorry," she wept against my chest. Can't you just wait for me a little longer? You waited for me for so long before. Why give up now? Why give up right when I finally understand my own feelings? Why?" Her repeated, desperate whys left me momentarily stunned. Why? I thought about it too. If I hadn't been wrongly sent to jail, would there have been a chance for us to fix everything? Could we actually have had a real shot at happiness together? She voiced the thought aloud, her voice breaking. We actually might have had a chance, right? Her eyes, on the verge of spilling fresh tears, searched my face for confirmation. If there had been no prison sentence, maybe I would have kept waiting, hoping against hope. But her heart would likely have always held another man, that idealized image of Mark. The end result probably wouldn't have changed, just dragged out longer, causing more pain. I shook my head slowly, a sad smile touching my lips. Kids who mess up always wish they hadn't done it, I said softly. But no one ever really knows if the next thing they'll do will also turn out to be a mistake. Nobody can predict the future, or guarantee they won't make mistakes. Besides, I added gently, nothing that happens is really a mistake in the grand scheme of things. It's usually just about the timing. Back then, Olivia, you didn't love me. I gently pushed her away from me. Now, you're going through incredibly tough times. You're lonely, you're vulnerable, you need someone, anyone. So you keep looking for me. You're just looking for someone to help you solve your problems, to lean on. Not because you truly need me, Ethan. Olivia, we're done here. My life slowly got back on track. Mr. Harrison, the old butler, heard about me finding a new house and insisted on bringing his young granddaughter, Lily, over for a housewarming dinner. By the end of the evening, he still stubbornly insisted on staying to take care of me. Sir, I watched you grow up from a boy, he argued, his eyes misting slightly. Why are you pushing me away now just because I'm getting old? Besides, he added proudly, I've saved enough over the years. I don't even need you to pay me a salary. I couldn't help but laugh, and finally gave in to the kind old man's persistence. Luckily, the apartment was spacious enough. And truthfully, living alone after everything felt empty. Having someone else's company, especially the warmth of family, felt better. This time, I invited them to stay not as my employer, but as my family. I knew Mr. Harrison only had his little granddaughter left in the world. Each night after that, seeing the warm lamp lit in the living room when I came home late from work, my long, cold heart slowly began to melt. I even started to feel like I was raising a kid myself. Helping Lily with her homework each evening became the most relaxing and cherished moment of my day. My colleagues at the law firm eventually agreed to let me return, not just as an employee, but as a full partner, trusting me to help lead them to greater heights. I heard about Olivia again indirectly when I took our legal team to handle some complex issues for a major client company. From casual conversation among their executives, I found out that Olivia's company had finally gone bankrupt. It turned out Mark had done more than just embezzle funds. Apparently, aiming to gain complete control over Olivia and her assets in the future, he had secretly used intermediaries to buy up scattered small shares of her company stock, eventually holding a percentage slightly larger than Olivia's own controlling stake. His plan was likely to oust her after they were married, but he got arrested before he could fully execute his hostile takeover. And those plans ultimately collapsed, along with the company after his conviction, especially as many key partners and clients left amidst the scandal. Uncle Ethan, why is that lady over there always staring at you? Lily whispered into my ear one sunny afternoon, her small arms wrapped tightly around my neck as I carried her. It feels weird. I followed her pointing finger. Across the park, sitting alone on a bench, was Olivia. She looked incredibly gaunt, almost skeletal, as if she had lost not just weight, but her very shape. My eyes lingered for just a second before I deliberately turned back to Lily, forcing a smile. That lady is probably looking at Lily because you're so cute. I bounced her gently in my arms. Wave goodbye to her now, sweetie. Let's head home. Lily obediently nodded, waving her tiny hand towards the figure on the bench. Uncle, she chirped brightly. She waved back. Does that mean I get ice cream tonight? I sighed theatrically, placing her carefully into her car seat and playfully tapping her small nose. "We'll see about that, little negotiator." The car engine roared to life, pulling away from the curb and heading down a road bathed in the warm, golden light of the setting sun.